Hey everyone, welcome to Cheap Property Europe. My name is Leo and thanks for joining us. Hey Davide, how are you going?
Hi Leo. I'm doing really well.
Great, that's great.
Thanks for having me on board.
Well, so Davide here, he's a property manager and consultant, part of his company Salento with Love. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Yes, we formed a company in 2018. Salento, probably a lot of people know Puglia rather than Salento, one of the 20 regions of Italy, Puglia. And Salento covers a very large area of this beautiful region. And I set up two companies, one in the UK, partner company, Salento with Love UK Limited. And we have a Salento with Love SRL here in Italy with a base for two offices, one in Maglie, right at the bottom of the Italian peninsula. I've got a map in my background here.
Yeah.
And another one in Nardo. So that's where we are.
So why specifically Salento, just quickly?
Personally, because over the years, starting in 2002, I started to invest in real estate in the area. Already back then, I could see how much potential this area had. And so I started to buy small properties, which I turned into holiday homes by doing some really tasteful refurbishment while I was living in the UK. And that escalated, and I carried on buying more and more properties. So after a sabbatical of a few years, I decided that this was a very great area to invest and to use my knowledge and my know-how in the real estate industry, and also in the field that I really enjoy, which is architecture.
So you were drawn to the property market in Salento, and given your expertise, what would you say the market is like in Italy right now?
We are talking at the end of 2020, which has definitely been an interesting year.
Interesting to
I
say
would
the
say
least.
around the world. Interesting is probably a definition.
Yeah.
I think we are witnessing some extraordinary changes in the real estate market with people moving around, and we are witnessing some shifts. I personally, when I started this in 2018, obviously I didn't foresee the current situation, and I was very much catering about people that wanted a holiday home or a place in the sun. We've realized over the last 7 or 8 months that this situation has been occurring, that more and more people are actually thinking about a place where they can actually smart work from. And so when you ask the question, what's the property market is like? Well, I think we are actually seeing a shift and a huge amount of interest over the last few months over properties in regions like Puglia.
Right. So especially in regions like Puglia and Salento, you're seeing more of the market kind of shifting towards holiday homes and rentals for people to kind of come to during the summers here and there, not as a kind of more of a permanent place for them to be. Do you see that as kind of the shift and where the market has gone right now?
Yes, I mean, obviously we're in Puglia, but probably for you that have seen some of the Q&As that I do, I do see an incredible interest when it comes to Italy in general. People are very attracted to the idea of owning a property somewhere where cost of living it's less, and where potentially the quality of life is much higher. So it's not just Puglia, but Puglia with a little bit more infrastructure potentially has been attracting a little bit more. But so the whole of Italy is actually creating quite a lot of demand. Yes, the answer to your question, predominantly as a holiday home, but a lot of people are also thinking as a holiday home which they can use for a long period of time while they're smart work from.
The change in landscape of working from home now has kind of given a lot of people the freedom to decide on where they want to move to, where they want to live, where they want to work from. With Cheap Property Europe, we have a lot of DMs and comments about people loving Italy and falling in love with it at first, and then now with the shift in the work culture, they're looking more seriously into Italy as a place to live and work.
Well, I can't think of a better country, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, you cover the whole of Europe. You cover the whole of Europe.
So let's just say, for example, someone like myself is looking to buy a property in Italy. What would be my first steps?
Well, the first step would be to, like I mentioned in one of my Q&As, is to understand the where, the when, and the whys. Right. So you really need to, according to the standard of living or life that you would like to have, or that you can imagine yourself into perhaps a few years down the line, because purchasing a property carries a projection over a longer period of time. Yeah. Then you need to answer these questions. So that will be the first step. So once you've established the why and the where and the when, and you're ready, the when is now perhaps, or in 6 months, and the why it's because whatever your reasons are, and the where you have established the area, then you're going to start searching for the property.
It's more of an existential question as well, as like to why am I actually moving to Italy first? And then you kind of take the next steps to start looking for a property, would you say?
Yes, I think obviously your whys, which in majority of the cases, I'm dealing with people which are in Australia, Canada, America, United States. The why is always a dream, the Italian dream, living in Italy, surrounded by history and beautiful food and fantastic landscape, going from skiing to beautiful sandy beaches. So once your whys are there, then yes, you've got to start, and you've identified the area. Then you can use portals like immobiliare.it or casa.it or Idealista, portals that allows you to start doing your search in not just identifying the right product, but also identifying the product that fits in within your budget and your expectations.
Let me go on this journey. I've found this ideal property, let's just say, from a website or from Cheap Property Europe, for example.
Exactly. That is exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. What is the process like to actually purchase the home? So let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
Well, the process, if you are here present, obviously the first step would be to go and view the property with the agent or the realtor or the estate agent that is advertising the property. So you want to make contact with the agency and book an appointment and go and see the property. So that would be the first option. Obviously, I think it's kind of normal what happens. You will never find just the one property. So you may set yourself 3 months, 4 months, 5 months to find the perfect property, unless the perfect one comes, and it will be too much of a shame. Sometimes people let go the perfect one because it's the first one. But if you feel, and your gut feeling is that you have identified a property that it's the answer to your needs, then you can just move gently into some due diligence, which can be done rather quickly before you move into making an offer.
You mentioned something very important there. You said due diligence. Could you get into a little bit of detail as to what you mean by due diligence? What is it that we should be doing?
Well, obviously the price of the property is advertised, so you already know what the price is, and there's always a little bit of movement on that price, but obviously fits in within your budget. So that's not the point, if you are interested in the property, to start negotiating on the price. The important thing is to understand if the property can be sold. I mean, you would think that because it's on the market, it can just be sold, but elements of due diligence are, first of all, engaging the services of a geometra, or, well, it's a figure in Italy that fits in between an architect and a structural engineer. Okay. But it's the type of person that banks, for example, uses when they do a survey on the property. Right. So we'll be engaging the services of somebody like that to inspect the property, making sure that the property, it's okay, and more than anything else, having a look at the paperwork that go from the urbanistic. So does it reflect the floor plan, but not the floor plan made by the realtor, the floor plan that are actually deposited, to the land registry offices, and more so to the borough, the council that is actually that property is under. So that's part of the due diligence, to making sure that the property is okay before you move on to sort of even considering making an offer.
Okay. So you'd want to have someone there to kind of survey it, to make sure that everything's right, even before you make an offer. So before the negotiations even begin.
Yes, and also other things that perhaps are not due diligence elements, but are important to know are what are the costs related to purchasing that property. And those costs are the cost of the notary, for example, or the stamp duty, or the taxes, the IMU, imposta di registro, that you will need to pay to the Italian government. It's the same more or less everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
So you'll need to know what that amount is, and you can work out those informations based on the informations that the realtor agency gives you.
Right.
So having those figures helps you as well in finding out what, if everything fits within your budget before you move into making an offer.
Good thing you were talking about the taxes and the fees involved. I've had a lot of people ask, what can be a ballpark figure? What kind of percentage can we be kind of expecting when it comes to these additional costs? Could you break down the costs for us?
Yes. If you're a resident in Italy, or if people have managed to get the residency over here and they'll buy the property in Italy and it's the first home, prima casa in Italian, so first house, they will pay 2% of the cadastral value.
Okay.
If it's not, and they're not a resident, or they have already a house and they're buying another one, or if they're not residents in Italy, they'll be paying 9% of the cadastral value. Now, this is a very important element which is covered in details in one of my Q&As that you can find on my YouTube channel. But the cadastral value can be established very, very quickly. You need two pieces of information that need to be given to you by the company that is selling the property, by the agency that is selling the property. One is the category of the property, so is it A4, A5, or whatever it is. And the other one is the cadastral value. So once you have these two pieces of information, there are quite a lot of websites that you can easily find with a calculator on the screen. Also, the link will be in the YouTube video that I've done on the Q&A. And people can literally put these two pieces of information in there. They will get the cadastral value of that property coming up on the screen, and then they just need to work out if it's 2% of that or 9% of that.
Right.
Bearing in mind that if 2% or 9% are less than 1,000, the minimum that you pay in Italy when you acquire property to the Italian government, it's 1,000 euros.
So the minimum you'd be expecting is at least 1,000.
Correct.
Doesn't matter what price, what listed price the property.
Correct. Then you have a 50 euro land registry and a 50 euro another small tax that you pay to the notary. So imagine the amount was very small on the 2% or the 9%, you will always have 1,100 euros as a minimum cost. Then obviously you have your notary. And if you've done a survey, you'll have the cost of the survey, of the due diligence, and you'll have the commission that you've got to pay to the real estate agent in Italy. This is a small aspect, and especially when you are dealing with the foreign market. Very, very often clients from the UK, from America, they find it very strange, the fact that they've got to pay up to 3% to the agency, sometimes much higher than 3%, because on very, very cheap properties, some realtor agencies, they have a fixed fee. It could be 2,000-3,000 euros, which is a lot more than 3%. It could be actually even more than 10%. And this is the buyer. It's an amount that the buyer needs to pay. This is accepted in the Italian market, but not just in Italy, in other countries as well. But that's how it works in Italy. So the vendor pays a percentage, the buyer pays a percentage. And that's to be factored in when you are working out your cost. So you may look at the property for 50,000. Well, then you need to add all these other bits on to get to your budget, really.
Right. As we're talking about, the costs and everything involved, I think one of the biggest questions, despite the property being 50,000, 60,000, 100,000, is for foreigners or people from outside of Italy. How hard is it, or how easy is it to get a mortgage?
I would say that it's not easy if you're not a resident, if you don't produce revenue in Italy. There are financial institutions out there which are not the average high street banks. So going into a bank like Unicredit or Intesa San Paolo, and if you're American or from wherever else, even British or German, even if you are from the European Union, thinking that you can actually get a mortgage on purchasing a property, it's almost impossible. There are some financial institutions out there that are prepared to lend money,
Yep.
The reality is that the deposit that you are expected to put down on the property and the interest rates that they would demand and the arrangement fees attached to then getting that loan are so high that I would say if you don't have the money to buy a property outright in Italy, then potentially it's better not to. But that's a personal choice. But to answer your questions, yes, there are out there, and they need to be researched, and they can be found.
So what you're saying is it's probably not as worth it to go with these institutions, because I mean the banks are going to make it very hard for you to try and get a mortgage. I guess the short answer to that also would be best to have cash on you, right?
Yes, I personally think that if I was going to pay, if the banks are lending at the moment at 3% or 4%, and I go to one of these financial institutions, and on top of putting 50% deposit, and then potentially 2,000-3,000 euros of arrangement fees, I then need to pay 7, 8, 9, 10% interest rates, then I think it's better to have cash. But like I said, the options are there, and the choice always stays in the hands of the buyer.
What are the kind of general rules and understandings of negotiation when it comes to property in Italy? I've heard that it's quite flexible. They're pretty okay with negotiations, but there is this inherent fear of lowballing, offering too little, kind of being rude, offending them by offering too little. Like, what's acceptable in Italy right now?
It's a very, negotiation is one of the areas that I really enjoy the most, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's a service that I offer to our clients.
Mm-hmm.
There is really a way of establishing a rule in some markets, like for example in the UK, which I know extremely well when it comes to purchasing properties in the UK. Offering at the moment anything below the market or what the actual asking price, it's out of the question, because the market right now it's actually going in spiking position. So very strange what's happening. But so you would normally, if a property goes on the market for 200, you would be expected to offer the 200, and probably you get a call that somebody's offered 205. In Italy, if a property is on the market for 200, you really need to ask yourself what it's worth to you. And this is a very interesting argument. It's no point looking at a property that it's on the market for 200 if you have 150 in your pocket, thinking that you can get it for 150, because potentially that property is worth 200. Mm-hmm. And you may have to push to the asking price if you really want to fulfill your dream.
Right.
In Italy, I would say everywhere apart from big cities like Milan and probably Rome, there is not a market price. It's not so much per square meter. So because the real estate market is very different to probably in a big city. Mm-hmm. So the big question is, how much is it worth to you?
Yes.
And do you have a comparison? So do you have 3 properties that you are considering, and this one has got a little bit better than something better? So if you don't manage to get this one at the price that you have in your mind, can you then move on to the other one? That's really what I would recommend. So answering your question is very difficult, because I see a property that sometimes I go and negotiate and I can offer even 30, 40% below the asking price. And sometimes I see a property that I know that not even 2% of the below the asking price is going to be accepted. So there is not really a rule of thumb in terms of, like, oh yes, they've got 100,000 on there. I'm sure if I go in and I offer 55, they're going to go for it, or 60, they're going to go for it. So just remember this. So there is room for movement, but it's always, how much is it worth to you?
Right.
So this is the big question, because if to you it's worth what the asking price is, then don't go too far from the asking price, because going very far from the asking price is also going to set up some imbalances in the negotiation.
Right. Okay.
You probably have in your head something that it's your target price, but it's far away from the target price, but you really want that property. And because you can't get to your target price, you end up losing the property that you really want.
Right.
So just factor this in, because finding a property that really does it for you is not easy. So if you find a property that really does it for you, then then be careful on your negotiations.
Yeah. So it's
Have I answered your question?
I would say so. I think you've answered it in a relatively philosophical way. I think just like how at the beginning you were like, you have to ask yourself why, and this whole journey of buying a house, it seems, is more of an internal journey for you. Like, this house is going to be your holiday home, or it's going to be a source of income, or it's going to be your permanent home, whichever it is. It's going to play a part in how you feel about it. And I think,
exactly right.
When you said about the negotiations, is like, it shouldn't be about the money as per se. Of course, there is some push and pull when it comes to negotiations, but I think what you said was right. Like, have a figure in your head, and just, if it works for that figure, then go for it. If it doesn't, have backups, have options. It is really just it's for yourself, really.
If you're buying for an investment, obviously, then potentially things are slightly different in your evaluation. So you have a price in mind and you need to stick to that structure. And so obviously, if that doesn't fit in and the offer is not accepted, you move on to another unit, and that's different. But if it's a house that ticks all the boxes, is near the sea, or is near the mountain, or is near the ski slope, or is next to
the in Italy.
exactly. And you think, okay, I've been looking for 6 months and this one ticks all the boxes. Well, arguing over 10, 15,000 euros, I know that you may think it's a lot of money, but I've bought properties over the years that I've gone in and I've felt such an energy for the property, and I felt guilty about offering anything less than the asking price. And I didn't want anybody to compete with. I didn't want to get into a situation that the other person needed to think. I wanted the property. And that sometimes is a better attitude. It releases better energy, but yes, there is always a little room for maneuver.
So you were mentioning before about the notary.
Yes.
And I was thinking, with the fees and everything involved, you didn't mention anything about lawyers. Can you touch a little bit upon where the lawyers are involved in the process, how important they are?
The true answer is that there is not a place for a lawyer when you purchase a property in Italy. Unless you're purchasing a property, of course, and you encounter some problems, then the lawyer needs to step in and unravel those situations. But let's hope that you don't get to that point. In Italy, the figure or the presence of the professional person that you need in order to complete a sale, it's a notary. It's approved by the Italian law, to the point that the lawyer cannot do a conveyancing. A lawyer cannot sell a property, cannot sign the deeds and register the sale of a property. So where does the lawyer come in? Well, the lawyer comes in when you don't have a professional figure involved, like a consultant, like somebody like myself, for example, but I only cover an area that I can literally get to.
Yeah.
So the lawyer is the person that looks at everything. So the lawyer is the person that potentially can instruct an independent surveyor to go and view the property. The lawyer is the person that talks to the surveyor and looks at the paperwork. The lawyer could also get involved in a negotiation with a realtor. And the lawyer is the one that is going to guide you through the whole process and put you in contact with a notary who's then going to sign the deeds. So what's the role of a lawyer? Well, really, it's more of a consultant, but being a professional as well. It goes a little bit beyond being a consultant, because he's got access to a way of looking at things a little bit differently from somebody who doesn't have access to those information. But it's not something that you do need when you purchase a property in Italy, but it's something that I do advise if you want to feel comfortable and safe. Because you're not here, because you don't speak the language, because you don't know the Italian laws, then potentially it's something that you should factor into your expenses.
So for lawyers, you'd say, is more of a peace of mind kind of investment. You are paying a little bit more, but you know that there's someone there that could, like you said, figure out any issues or solve any problems when it comes to the process of buying a house.
Yes, that's the answer. I mean, I've bought more than many properties. Obviously, I've never used a lawyer, so it's not something that you do need, but it's someone that can really offer you peace of mind when it comes to the whole the whole process of purchasing a property. So it's an independent, it's really a true independent, a little bit like what I do over here. I'm a true independent. So for me, the client is the person that is buying the property. So I need to make sure that everything is okay before we get to actually the completion to the notary. So I kind of cover that role, but obviously when I'm not available, I would say all through Italy, a real estate lawyer would be the person that you'll need.
We have, a lot of followers who are obviously from outside of Europe. I was thinking, let's just say I live elsewhere, right? And plan to only use my property as a holiday home. How easy is it to find a property manager to take care of my place? And what should I be expecting from them?
Well, the reason why I set up the company here in Italy, it's because I realized there was a huge gap in the market, and especially here where I am, we're surrounded by coastlines, and I would say thousands of people, Italians that live in the north of Italy or foreigners, have purchased the property. I realized that there isn't a single property management company out here servicing these homes, not even from the point of view of keeping an eye on these properties or doing some basic maintenance. So the answer to your question is that there is a huge gap in the market, which hasn't allowed really the real estate market to grow and expand, attracting huge amount of buyers like it's happened in places like Spain or the Canary Islands or in some areas in Portugal, where the service was there, and so people have bought a property as a result of the service being there. So to answer to your question, I would say that if you bought a property in Salento, we are here. If you bought a property elsewhere, then I would say I haven't come across companies that really offer basic property management to then different levels and tiers of property management, to the point that potentially you can generate revenue by someone renting and looking at your property and as a mean of generating revenue. So unfortunately, that's probably a little bit of a gap that hasn't allowed, and especially the touristy areas of Italy and the beautiful Sicily and some areas in Calabria or the Amalfi Coast, that haven't potentially attracted a lot more outside buyers, because the service of property management hasn't been there really for them.
So if you're an Italian, there's a gap in the market. There's business that you can look into right now. Just not around Salento, it's covered already. But
no, that's fine. That's all right. I love competition. In fact, I feel alone here.
So let's just say, that is, I think, a very big concern for a lot of people who are buying a holiday home in Italy, is what happens to it when I'm not there. It needs to be taken care of. What kind of, I guess, let's just say with your business, what kind of services can they expect if they were to have a property manager in Italy, in Salento, taking care of?
Well, I've created a service which is called Home to Home, which is not too different from property management companies in different parts of Europe that they do it really well, which will go from checking on your property on a monthly basis, literally just go in, doing an inventory, doing a maintenance check once a year to make sure that everything is okay, and a report that allows you to see if you're going to make some improvements, giving access to tradesmen, receiving your parcels while you're not here. Perhaps we get them delivered to our office here, which happens more or less on a weekly basis, and then drop them off at the property that it's in question. Getting your post delivered here, getting your bills or anything that arrives at your property, getting scanned and emailed across to you. There are so many little things, but I would say just the basic thing of knowing that you can pick up the phone and say, is my property okay? Because ultimately you have a big asset that is sitting on the other side of the world, and you want to make sure that it's okay. Yeah. So all this list of things that we offer, and I've actually created a package that is called Home to Home. It's just a basic. And we find that are the ABC of attracting people to purchase a property somewhere, knowing that you have access to someone that is looking after your asset.
I'm guessing that a lot of people hope to also earn a little bit of extra income from their property when they're not using it. how does it work when it comes to renting out the property, through property managers or through other sites? How does it work?
Generating revenue, if it's your second home, I think it's so important. It also brings me back to my business model. When I bought my first property here in Italy in 2002, it was a property that I was using when I was traveling to Italy once a year or twice a year. But for the rest of the year, I rented it out as a holiday home. And then it grew to 2 properties, 3, 4, 5, and more and more. And so I think that's very important. So I've created a product that is very much based on what I did for myself. So we offer a concierge 24/7 to anyone that uses the properties in question. We manage the calendar, we manage the platform that the client uses. It could be Airbnb, Booking, or any other platform. We manage your client, so we manage the property. So the cleaner goes in, the property gets set up, the laundry, the maintenance, anything that needs to be done, the check-in, the check-out, the inventories, we do all of that. And we don't charge a percentage on whatever you make. So you rent your property at whatever price you think it's fit for your property. We will just manage it for you. That's what we do. So that's the type of product that it's really needed to allow people to consider having a property here. Potentially, some of my clients are not making a huge profit out of it, or probably they're not making profit at all, but they're paying all their expenses. So it's like they have a property here that is paying for itself, and probably at the end of the year, they've got €1,000 extra, and plus they've got their property that they can use at the peak time of the seasons as well.
So this is what people should be expecting when it comes to property management. And you mentioned, Airbnb in there, and I wanted to bring up the issue that a lot of major cities in Europe right now are kind of cracking down on Airbnb a little bit. They're claiming that it's distorting the housing market. Is that an issue in Italy as well? Do you see that being an issue in the future?
Well, at the moment, we're not experiencing that problem here in terms of the government or anybody cracking down on any holiday lettings platforms, including Airbnb.
That's positive news.
That's very good news.
Yeah. And you have a lot of experience, like you said, buying property, but you also renovate, you also do up your properties. I know that a lot of listings and a lot of properties that we see, there are things that need to be fixed here and there, right? That's probably one of the reasons why the property is a little bit cheaper than it should be, whether it's a roof, whether it's not connected to gas or mains or water. What can we be expecting when it comes to these renovations in terms of cost, in terms of time frame? Can you give us a little bit of detail on that?
It very much depends on the state of the property when you buy a property. I mean, we're in a region here where a lot of people are interested in these very historic and period buildings, which they were left abandoned perhaps 30, 40, 50 years ago, and people have moved to better quality of living and houses. And now we are seeing a surge of people wanting these properties, renovating them. And in fact, they've got some extraordinary features, so I can see why. But it's very important to factor in what are the costs potentially before you move in to even making an offer. So that part of due diligence that we talked about at the beginning could also include doing some costing in regards to how much it will cost to bring the property to the standard that you want. Because everybody may have a different standard. Some people may say, I want to keep the old doors. I want to keep the original floor. I'm not interested in underfloor heating. I'm not interested in double glazing. So according to the standard that you want to bring that property in, then it's worth doing some costing before. So it depends. We can go from something that needs just a very general kind of approach to something that needs a really, really deep approach. So we can go from anything from €400 per square meter up to €1,000 per square meter and more, depending on the standard that you would like to achieve with your finishing.
There's a lot of people who actually would think about and consider renovating themselves. Maybe they would do some basic renovation or basic kind of construction where you're connecting mains and power and all that. But when it comes to the inside, where anything cosmetic, they would kind of prefer to do it themselves, perhaps. Would you say it's easy for them to do so? Are there kind of like hardware stores that kind of facilitate that they kind of get everything they need to do that themselves in Italy?
Absolutely, it's easy. If you're Americans, you're probably familiar with Home Depot or big companies like that. we have the equivalent of Bricoman or other companies, and then there isn't a single village in Italy that doesn't have a good hardware store where you can pick up all your things. So for anyone that loves DIY, do it yourself, I think there isn't any particular problem. And I come across so many bloggers and people that publish videos that they've done that in Italy. So yes, absolutely fine.
So we've covered quite a bit already. We've talked about everything from taxes, additional fees, notaries, negotiations. I think one of the questions for me is, does what we have spoken about today, does it apply to kind of the whole of Italy?
The rules and the dynamics surrounding purchasing a property, they are exactly the same regardless of where you are. So it doesn't matter if you're picking up a property in a beautiful little village in Sicily or on the top of the mountains on the border with Switzerland, Lake Como. The rules are exactly the same when it comes to the due diligence that you need to follow, the 9%, the 2%, the notary, everything, it's exactly the same. Nothing changes.
Well, that's great to hear. So obviously the information here is applicable to wherever you look within Italy. If you find a nice house, wherever it is you may be looking, this information applies directly to that situation. I want to thank you, Davide, for
pleasure.
For speaking with me. Your wealth of knowledge, I'm sure everyone would appreciate 100%. So before I let you go, could you let everyone know where they can find you?
I've started a channel which is called Salento with Love. So you can perhaps follow me on that channel on YouTube. We also have a page on Instagram, which I try to keep alive with things that we do on a regular basis. And we have a website, www.salentowithlove.com.
Well, I mean, I found Davide through YouTube, and then I found him also on Instagram. And, I was sucked in by his personality and by the way you made your videos. You were so comfortable and confident on camera. It just made me want to continue listening and watching it. Once again, Davide, thank you very much for...
I think the last shout that I would like to give to everyone that bumps onto your cheap property in EU is that you're doing a fantastic job in identifying properties around Europe. And Europe is full of character, is full of history. Amazing towns in Spain that have history going back hundreds of years ago. The same thing in Italy or Greece or other parts of the world. So I think Europe still has that extreme charm that you can hardly find. I remember going around Australia years ago and being upset because I couldn't see anything that was older than 100 years. Yeah. So here in Europe, you have that, and you're doing a fantastic job identifying those things. And never be put off by buying a property in Europe, because the laws are there to protect the buyer, and you just have to make sure that you do your due diligence right from the beginning. Good planning.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Davide.
Great. Thank you for having me on board.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us. Please leave a comment down below to let me know what you thought, if you had any feedback, or if there was any topics that we might have missed that you want to see addressed in the next video. If you found this video useful or insightful, please give it a like and consider subscribing, because I'll be doing plenty more of these videos, speaking with professionals and people who have first-hand experience buying a property in Europe, living in it, renovating it, all that jazz. Once again, thank you very much for tuning in, and see you next video.